Oof. Happy Mushoku Sundays, everybody, if it's happy for you. What an absolutely emotional episode. Episode 17 of the second season of Mushoku Tensei. I broke down in tears 3 times at this episode. Just like so much emphasis on Norn, the pain she's going through, and all those shots of Rudy in like this massive amount of pain. What an incredible adaptation. Again, for those who don't know, this is a perspective of somebody that has read the novel series, watching the anime, so my thoughts on the actual anime itself, as well as skip content, which, thankfully, in this episode, they took their time. This was an incredibly well done adaptation. There is some tidbits early on, and yes, quite a bit around Norn herself. They unfortunately skipped quite a bit of her life in Millis, which we'll get into with this video, so if you are an anime only, this is the place to be. There was one really curious thing in this episode. They actually added an additional thing, which is the point which Rudeus walks up the door to Norn and goes to grab the doorknob. That yell out of his past self saying go away was added in the anime. That's an anime only little tidbit there. And honestly, it punched me in the stomach. It was a very welcome addition that really did punch home the fears that Rudeus has as he's coming to that door. Again, he sees himself in Norn right now. And to have that little addition there where he's yelling out at himself to get away, essentially by putting that sound bit in there and that shock in Rudeus, it is literally driving home to the viewer what is being spelled out in the novel series, which is that, yes, Rudeus coming there is now putting himself in the shoes of his brother that tried to get him out of there. It was such a fantastic addition. I like the fact that when he opens the door and he sees his room in there and it kind of cuts over, just so much... Such a fantastic episode, and I think visually they did an incredible job as well. This is easily one of the best adapted episodes of the second season, just mainly around the idea that none of these shots are, like, stale. It feels like there are a lot of different perspective shots, the perspectives constantly moving around. They did an incredible job of just kind of putting emotion in the shots themselves. So, anyways, let's get into the episode proper, and let's go through this. Like I said before, this is for anime onlys to get a context of what was missed from the light novel to the anime adaptation. So let's just dive into it. Opening up the episode, we did skip a little bit here, and that's the point in which Rudeus finds out that Norn has shut herself in. He actually came to the gates, and that's the point in which Linnea and Presena rushed up to him and Sylphie and said, hey, Norn has locked herself up in a room. And what's so great here is really a lot of emphasis on Rudeus. At that point, shock hits him. He literally freezes in place. Sylphie immediately, she runs to the dorm. Like, she's going to go see what's going on with Norn, and later on she apologized because she wasn't able to do much. That was why. Like, she went to Norn immediately, but unfortunately Norn wasn't responding to her at all. But yeah, as he's staying there, he's going, I should probably follow Sylphie to go see what's going on. But he can't move. He's at this point feeling himself in his past life, his old bully self. It says while he should have followed his wife, he was in a state of panic. The word shut-in had some very heavy connotations to him. He didn't know what to do. It was all over the minute that he locked himself up in his previous life. The outside world was a dangerous place for him, full of people that wanted to harm him. By leaving, he thought he'd be bullied again. He'd be miserable all over again if he emerged from isolation. He had to find the cause of her behavior if he wanted to change. Now this is where it actually gets into what actually caused him to be bullied. Memories of his past life flash in his mind. Standing in a line, punks breaking in line. He stood up for himself, only to get beaten. That one mistake led to a life of living hell. If Norm was going through the same situation, he'd beat down the bullies until she felt safe again. He didn't care if they were rich aristocrats or royalty. He'd find them and make them live to regret antagonizing him. She possibly initiated the conflict, but whatever the cause, this was over the line. He didn't even care if she hated him. She was part of his family. And this is kind of a sense that you get in this episode as he's walking down that hallway. And Linnea and Presena are like, hey, boss, you look really scary right now. Or at least, hey, stop. And then Presena's like, hey, no, he looks scary right now. And then additionally, I like the addition that you have as he's walking, all the faculty, it looks like faculty members, they're all looking to him and going, whoa, okay. Again, Rudeus is like an infamous person in this school. Everybody fears him. He's dangerous. He's powerful. Again, he one-shotted a Demon King. So everybody's afraid of him. So if he looks angry, people are terrified of him. And so he's walking down this hall, and he's just, his whole goal here, and it's what you feel like when he comes into the actual classroom, is he wants to find out who did it, and he wants to destroy them. It kind of mentions it a little bit in the anime, but as he's calling out for somebody to step forward, he's like, oh, don't worry about it. I just want you to apologize. But as he's doing that, he's going, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Who do I shoot? He's literally in his mind thinking, I want to stone cannon whoever steps up. Like he has to stop himself because somebody speaks up. He's like, is that the one? Is it the one I'm going to blast? I'm going to incinerate them? He is so mad right now. And it is kind of a scary thought process. This is his trauma of his past life coming forward to his new life. Like, he's happy. He's walking to school. All right. I'm a little worried about Norn and everything. Hope she's, settling in okay. And then suddenly Linnea and Prasenna walk up and say, hey, remember your past life? It's happening again. And all he can think about is all those days being bullied. And I like that they keep they showed a couple shots of that in the anime of him being bullied. That was me. I don't want that to happen to Norn. She's family, and I won't let her go through what I went through. I'm already getting emotional. I'm already getting emotional. We're not even to the emotional parts. That shows that desperation, that anger that's in his mind right now as he walks into that classroom. But yeah, he goes in the classroom, asks them to, fess up. I don't know the detail. He literally didn't even go to Norn first. He went straight to the classroom, and this is kind of that big, massive mistake that he'll regret later when he's in a dining hall. He's like, crap, I messed up. He even apologized to Linnea and Prasenna. I'm sorry that I dragged you through that because that's kind of embarrassing. Like, I made an idiot of myself because I assumed her situation was the same as mine. So there's got to be somebody has to be at fault, and I will find them and destroy them. That's all they can think about. She's being bullied like I was. And he makes a fool of himself by going in that classroom and then realizing at some point, yeah, everybody that's stepping up, they're all saying that they were essentially comparing her to him. Like, yes, hey, I was asking about you and thought that, it'd be cool as you. The teacher's like, yeah, I was giving her homework and she was messing up and I told her to be more like you. He realized really quickly, oh crap, I messed up. I done goofed. It's actually me. I'm the problem, not this classroom of kids. And he was, again, about to blast somebody. Like, he was going to level the place. Like, that's how, super angry he was. But yeah, they go to the dining hall, and that's the point where he realizes, yeah, this really hurt. Long story short, it all came back to him. Every time she lost her cool, it was because someone was comparing her to him. She hated being compared to him, and hated when someone referenced him as a way of complimenting her. They weren't deliberately trying to upset her. Some of them were trying to be nice by telling her that she was nothing like her bully of a brother. In her old school, she was constantly compared to Aisha. Now she was being compared to him. If that wasn't enough, there was a whole Pantsu incident. Ariel did a great job following up the victims. Most could look back on it and laugh. It seems someone had seen this happening from a distance and given an exaggerated account of the events. As we find out, no, she knew about it. She's seen it. While Norn heard about this, she may have thought not only was she inferior to her brother, but a perverted brother at that. Again, it really hits in his head, I caused all this. I'm the problem. She hates me, and now she's being compared. And I do like the fact that eventually, and I felt like this with the novel series, it's not exactly what she's thinking. Again, he's constantly making mistakes as to what he thinks is wrong with her because the only reference that he has, because he didn't go to her first, something that she's going through has to be similar to what I went through. But yeah, like the little, I like Linnea and Prasenna there. He's like, no, it's okay. You have to protect your sister. I have a sister too. I would do the same thing as you. A little cracking a joke to kind of make it not, I really have to admit, and I hopefully I don't forget, but I think this entire episode just kind of emphasized how cool Linnea and Prasenna are. They were just like the super sisters. Like, they were just totally helping out the whole situation. There was so much emphasis put to what they did with Rudeus and helped him out. And now this is where we really start to emphasize the difficulty that he feels Norn is going to face if she stays there. This is a big, crucial part to why he has so much anxiety. I have to fix this quickly because I can't let her turn out like I did. The longer you were locked up, the more you regret and wish you could go back. Regrets build up over many years until 2 or maybe 10 years slip by. Then by that point, it was too late to undo the choices you made. He's sort of making a snowball analogy here. The more it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the harder it is to let it go and go away. You figure it's part of why many parents push their kids so hard. Everyone has regrets. You take those out on others sometimes. Rudeus then asked Linnea and Prasenna, tell me something, you two. Say you were less talented than your siblings, and people won't stop reminding you of that fact. What's the best thing you can do about that? They said, I don't know, boss. The two of us are pretty talented, Yep, we're not too shabby at anything. Wait, he wondered, weren't they shipped off for being too dumb and lazy? Whatever, they lack self-awareness, clearly. Then Linnea spoke up. Oh, I do know someone like that. Aunt Ghislaine. She used to be a thug who went around starting fights all the time. But then she started training, and she ended up becoming a sword king. Okay, that wasn't a bad example. There was a chance that Norn had something special that hadn't been discovered yet. Something Rudeus and Aisha couldn't compete with. If she didn't want to be compared, she could do something neither of them tried. She had to find a field that interested her outside of magic and swordplay. There was a risk that she wouldn't be talented at it, similar to Zenoba, But despite that lack of talent, he enjoyed life. Yeah, I think that's, again, once again, comparing himself and kind of saying, okay, if I find something like that, it would be fine. He would, just like Zenoba. He's terrible at it, but he's enjoying life. Still, this may not work for Norn. Arguments like that didn't work on him before. Again, he's going, yeah, somebody... Again, it's one of those things where he's kind of putting himself in that position and going, okay, what argument can I have? Oh, let's try this. No, that wouldn't work on me. I would probably say no. Or they did try it on me, and it didn't work. Again, he was stuck in his room for a long time. He had plenty of experience of people trying different things. But yeah, when he asked them how to do that, they're like, just go in there and just barge right in there and just kick her back into class. He's like, that made it sound simple. But maybe he was overthinking the details. She was only 10, perhaps just sulking. It had been only 2 days. Maybe it was too soon to call her a shut-in. Spending some time alone when you're feeling down isn't unusual. She was obviously struggling. He'd been telling himself they needed space, but was that true? Maybe he was avoiding the issue. He could have been actively supporting her, helping her adjust. And that's where it gets into the idea of him apologizing for not doing more later on. This hands-off approach was easier, but that didn't mean it was a better choice. It would be different if she was older, but she was only 10. Giving her more attention than she wanted was probably the right call. And again, this goes back to the previous episode, previous chapters, is this idea of him fearing that if he were to keep her there at his house, it would just cause her to push away more. She'd be constantly seeing them and get angry. He thought that if he nailed her down, then it would cause her to hate him. But yeah, this is when we go to the break-in. Breaking into Norn's room. It played out the same way. Yes, Ariel does a little speech over here to kind of draw the attention of everybody, pull them out of the dorms, and then he's able to kind of sneak in. Unfortunately, they skipped a little tidbit where when he first got into Linnea and Presenta's room, as his eyes were adjusting in the dark room, he grabbed one of Presenta's bras, and of course, it's big. A really big bra. And yeah, Linnea offered him to take it home. That's great. That was great. Again, Linnea and Presenta in this whole segment are just so freaking cool. From there, he got in a laundry cart, and he notes here that it's actually Sylphie's sheet. So don't worry, he didn't get into the laundry of somebody else, and I think he sniffed it. And yeah, they add a little bit here where Linnea's pushing him, and then over here you have Presenta's keeping them busy, giving a little kind of thumbs up. It was really cool. But yeah, that's when he reaches the room. Knocks on it a couple times, says that he's coming in, and then he goes to reach for the doorknob. And again, this is an anime-only thing. I absolutely love that little addition, the go away. It's him himself literally yelling at his brother, go away. He's now the brother trying to get in the door, and he himself inside is saying, I don't want to talk to you. He's having that fear that if I go in there, I can't change anything because my brother couldn't change anything. It's just like I said, I didn't, because it was not in the novel, I wasn't expecting it. It just absolutely gut punched me. But yeah, he opens the door, sees his room very briefly before it kind of shifts over, walks in there. He sat down wondering what to say. What did he want said to him? He couldn't remember. All his rehearsing beforehand evaporated from his mind. He remembered what he hated hearing, at least. My way or the highway. You're going to go back to school right now. I'm paying your tuition for a reason. Stop making a nuisance of yourself. Maybe Linnea and Presenta was right. A slap upside the head might be the simplest. She was only 10, so it may be enough to make her do what he wanted, but that would be the opposite of a long-term solution. Another incident could occur, and she'd grow more defiant. It is kind of interesting that right here, and this is, yes, in context is a really bad thing to kind of bring up. I could just slap her, but it is kind of one of those aspects that he doesn't know how to care for a person. He doesn't know how to protect a child. He doesn't know what to do for her. He's just running those scenarios in his head. And yes, he's thinking, okay, what did Linnea and Presenta say? Okay, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, for Beast Folk. But he realizes, no, I can't do that because what if it happens again? She's going to go, okay, he's coming in here in order to hit me. He hit me last time. And yes, when you get to her perspective, which again, unfortunately, the anime kind of glossed over, you'll see that that would have been an absolutely devastating thing to do because I'm getting ahead of myself. She was afraid of him the entire time she was there, that he was going to strike her, just like he struck her father. It was his fault that she was here. He had no right to lecture or hit her. If anything, he owed her an apology. Not that it would change anything. Rumors wouldn't go away, and she would keep being compared to him. And that's when they both spoke up together, before they both fell silent. He really felt like he missed his chance. I'm sorry, Norn. It hasn't been easy for you here, has it? You finally got into a new school, but now everyone's pestering you about me. I'm not even sure what to say, honestly. I guess I don't really even understand you all that well. There was no response. He was still fighting for words. He didn't know anything about her. He kept his distance and told himself not to pry. He didn't even try to get to know her. I know this must be hard for you, but I'm not sure what to do. Still, nothing. He didn't even know what she was thinking, or if she was listening. Was it a lost cause? Should he just back down and wait for Paul to get here? Maybe seek help from people that he knew? Maybe Nanahoshi or Elise? He suddenly found himself remembering what his brother said when he used to come to see him when he first shut himself in. His brother said, life always has its ups and downs, you know. But there are people out there that have it worse than you. Things might be tough right now, but if you just run away from all of your problems, you'll keep running forever. That's much worse in the long run. You don't have to go back to school right away, but why don't you just at least come down for lunch with me? This is the part where it started to really hit me personally because I have brothers. And just the idea of a brother just trying to reach out for you and you just can't see it. I mean, even for me as the other brother, like I've been on literally both sides of the whole field, and it's like trying to reach out to somebody and it just seems like nothing is getting through. It is an absolutely painful experience. And another reason why this hurts so much is this is the first point in which we get some sort of indication of what his family did for him. Yes, we've over time, all the way up to this point, get some indications of, you know, that they did try stuff or whatever. They tried to get him to come out or whatever, and he constantly yelled at them. He constantly yelled at them to bring him stuff. He was a very selfish person and a very locked up person and a person in a lot of pain and hate and fear of leaving. But this is the first indication of, oh, so his brother was always there. His brother kept coming in there trying to get into his mind and get him out of that room. It's kind of a revelation moment for the reader and the anime viewer. In his mind, he answered those words by spitting in his face. But in reality, he ignored him. Still, he spent time in there, delivering his speeches, watching him closely, looking like he had something more to say. But Rudy kept ignoring him, confident he couldn't understand his feelings. Maybe this was how he felt back then. They'd sit there for hours in silence until he would leave. After a while, he stopped showing up. Others would visit instead. Maybe he arranged that. In the end, he ignored everything. This may be a crucial turning point. If he backed off now, Rudius had a terrible feeling that she may stay in there forever. He couldn't turn and run. Not this time. And that's where in the novel series, it shifts to chapter 5 where it covers Norn's perspective. And like I said, there is a lot here. So buckle up for the anime onlys, how much stuff they skipped here, unfortunately. It still managed to hit the points, so don't get me wrong, but it's still some really great extra context. It opens up, of course, with the whole scene where Rudius had first met Norn, or at least Norn met him, because she doesn't really remember much from her childhood. She just remembers, oh, the point that I met him was a point in which he was on top of my father and beating the tar out of him. The first time they met, he was hitting her father. She loved her dad, even if he had huge flaws. He always put her first. Years later, she could recognize that her father provoked the fight. Rudius had completed a long journey, and father provoked him harshly. But at that time, all she's seen was her brother sitting atop him and punching him. All she could think was that he was going to kill her father. That was all that mattered at the moment. She wasn't going to accept that monster as part of the family. Yeah, right here, she's literally acknowledging that she figured out later, eventually, that it was father's fault. So that is an interesting point to put there. Even at this point that Norn is in that room, she doesn't think that it was Rudius' fault that they fought. Which I think up until this point, again, all that we've seen of Norn, she hated Rudius because of that fight. She wasn't afraid of him, though. Just hated him. Kept hating him for a long time after that. And it didn't help that people kept complimenting him. Father, her sister, and even the family maid. That's a painful one that she calls Lilia the family maid and not, you know, mother-in-law or something else. Or at least just call her Lilia. Which, unfortunately, yes, Lilia wants that. And now here's some really juicy bits right here that's extremely painful. In Millis, at school, Aisha insisted on constantly competing with her. She challenged Norn in the classroom and on the field, beat her soundly, and rubbed her nose in Norn's failures. With Aisha around, she spent every day feeling like a loser. Norn felt like she could never be Aisha's friend. Oof. Norn's grandmother was aware of the state of these affairs and didn't like it one bit, holding nothing but contempt for Aisha, who she called illegitimate. Here's a really painful part, because this goes into that whole, remember the whole discussion that we had in the previous episode with Aisha and what she was going through. Again, she was being seen as this stain on the family. And this is where you see children going through this sort of judgment by older individuals. This isn't healthy for a child. What Aisha's going through over here is feeling like she has to do better because everybody sees her as illegitimate. They don't even see her as part of the family. She is the maid's daughter. We don't want her around. And over here, Norn is kind of being taken care of, and the grandmother's over here like raising her nose at the other sister and getting angry at the other sister because she's outdoing Norn. It's just, again, it's an extremely unhealthy experience for these two children. No matter if Aisha's doing nasty things to Norn or Norn's just trying to stand up on her own 2 feet, this is a painful experience. As a lady of the Latcher family, which again is Zenith's family, grandmother had high expectations for Norn, meaning Norn had to be competent at the very least. Norn was put through etiquette classes and lessons to prepare for specific ceremonies. Nothing came natural for her. She failed and was scolded on a daily basis. Whenever she embarrassed herself, her grandmother would mutter, "I suppose that adventuring business must pollute the blood as well as the spirit." Oof, just don't like this grandma. I want to strangle this grandma. Just a snooty family. And again, this is a very prestige family in the Millis, in the Millis nobility. They are very well known. So yeah, what Zenith did in their mind, running off and getting with Paul, is just not something they don't like. It was an insult to both mom and dad. Paul worked hard for Norn, so it didn't take long for Norn to hate grandmother as well. So it wasn't a shock that Norn followed father when Roxy showed up with a location of mom. With a mother in Millis aristocracy and a father from an Osran noble house, she had a good lineage at least. For that reason, her grandfather was willing to take her into his household on a permanent basis. But Norn cried and pleaded until she eventually got to go with Paul. Yeah, so this kind of indicates that, yeah, Paul didn't want to bring her with them. And that's the difficulty they're facing, is they got the location of Zenith, but it's like, okay, the point they get over there, from then on, and we have to go to Begarit. And Begarit is very dangerous. Like, it's right there with, like, Demon Continent. Demon Continent is supposed to be the most difficult, but this place is dangerous as well. Yet, in the end, Paul sent her off to live with Brudius, due to the dangers from here on, saying he'd join her once he found Mother. She cried and refused. If it wasn't for Rajeard showing up, she may have worn down her father eventually. Rajeard just pops up and suddenly is like, okay, dang it, I almost got him. I almost got Dad. By the way, that whole segment, I was waiting for this episode to come out before I did that skip chapter. So I may release that next week or during the next week, but keep an eye out for that on the channel. It's the whole segment where Rajeard first shows up and Norn meets him. I wanted to make sure that stuff wasn't placed in this episode. I'm trying to be very careful when I cover skip content that it can't just be rearranged, and I figured this episode, if anything, was going to have it. Rajeard was kind, both the first and second time she met him. Yeah, for those who don't know, when she was in Millis, when Rajeard was going to meet his friend, he bumped into Norn and gave her an apple, and that's the apple that she brings to Paul later on during his entire story, which I covered that in the skip chapter video. So she ended up heading north to her brother's home. Once they departed, Aisha dropped the good girl act and started acting like a leader, coming up with all sorts of crazy plans. Norn thought that she was being stupid, trying to take charge with two grown-ups with them. But Rajeard and Ginger took her seriously and tried most of her ideas. Oof. Aisha's opinions always carried more weight. It was unfair. Most of Norn's ideas were basically ignored. The only thing that got her through it was Rajeard, who comforted her and listened to her complaints. However, even he complimented Rudius, calling him a remarkable man and how he looked forward to seeing him, smiling as he talked about him, even though he almost never smiled. The Rudius that she knew and Rajeard knew seemed entirely different. Perhaps that's when she started to be afraid of Rudius. That's when it shifts from hatred to afraid. He was a powerful magician, worthy of respect. Everyone said so. He was also the one that beat up father. He was violent, and there was no guarantee he wouldn't hit her too. There it is right there. Afraid that he will strike her. This made her afraid of living with him, waking in the middle of the night, trembling. However, Rajeard would comfort her on these nights, telling stories of his past. Even if they were mostly sad stories, it helped her fall asleep. Oof, yeah, this is a very tough little segment here. And again, it kind of shows that shift in the mindset of Norn, going from, like I said earlier, from hatred for striking father, who was like her treasure, and the fact that he is the only one for her. Like, he is treasuring her and protecting her and working hard to keep her safe. I hate this guy that attacked him. And then now over here, but she wasn't fearing him. She just hated him. But now it's turning from hatred to fear. I'm now afraid of him hurting me. Upon reuniting with Brudius, he was drunk and clinging to a woman. She was apparently a childhood friend from Bena Village, but Norn didn't remember her at all. She had a vague memory of a kid hanging around Aisha and Lilia, but she was nothing like this Sylphie person. She must have changed over the years. Brudius was clearly enjoying his life to the fullest. They covered this in the anime, but it's still, it hurts so much. It made Norn angry seeing that. Her father wasn't playing around with women for years and years, putting everything on hold until he found their mother. He hadn't even touched Lilia. Paul hadn't even touched Lilia. Rudius's priority, on the other hand, was his own happiness. And again, this is similar. This is literally one for one what happened with Paul. Remember when Rudius was traveling back home and he went to Milas, he ran into Paul. And what did he do to Paul? I'm having this great adventure. Now, in Rudius's mind at that time, he didn't want Paul to worry. He just wanted to talk about all these grand adventures and everything. I'm handling it. Don't worry. I did this and this and this happened, this happened. And what did Paul do? Up until that point, Paul has been suffering. When are my family members going to show up dead? Will I ever find them? I'm finding everybody else. I'm finding corpses. But when am I going to find my dead family? He was devastated and just hurting so much. And then Rudius comes in and says, yeah, I'm having a great time. Paul flipped out. And now Norn is doing the same thing. From Rudius's perspective here, he literally was told by Paul, I'll handle mother, take care of things up there, move on with your life, enjoy your time. By the way, later on, I'm going to send, Norn and Aisha up there, take care of them. I'll handle things. We know where mom's at. Don't worry. He's being told by Paul, don't worry, we'll find her. Even before then, when Eloise first came to him and said, hey, we found out where Zenith is, don't worry, Paul's got it. Everybody's telling Rudius, Paul has it. Now, yes, Rudius can say, I don't care, I'm going anyways, but he doesn't have a really strong connection with Zenith. And he doesn't have a strong connection with his family. He was just kind of moving on with his life because everybody's saying it's okay. Now here, again, Rudius thinks that everything's fine, but Norn's perspective, I've been down there with father this entire time and he's suffering. And we've been suffering. We're trying to find, and dad's working so hard to find mom. And now here's Rudius, and he's just enjoying life with some random girl. They're just having a good old day. That's not what dad's doing. Dad hadn't even touched Lilia. He's not messing around with women. He's looking for mom. So yes, makes perfect sense that right here, she mad. She mad. But Norn couldn't bring herself to say anything. She was afraid of him, and figured Rajeard would take Rudius aside as he was happy to see him. The next day, Rajeard left. She thought he'd stay longer. Then she was alone. Aisha was overjoyed being with Rudius. Sylphie seemed nice enough, but she wasn't on Norn's side. She had no one on her side. She was stuck there for months in fear. Rudius would probably be nice to Aisha and praise Aisha. She always said it was Norn's fault for not doing anything right. Said she didn't put in any effort, but there was things that she just couldn't do, no matter how hard she tried. Even if she wanted to improve, but in practice, she couldn't compare to Aisha. For now, all she could do is hide away and hope no one got mad at her. Hope no one would tell her how inferior she was and get tossed out in the cold. Ugh. Then Rudius decided Norn would attend the university. She feared being compared to Aisha again, but thankfully, she had no intention of attending. But even still, she couldn't pass the exam without studying. Plus, the place was different for all ages. But then Rudius said something thoughtless and rude, that he would just buy her a spot. This turned into an argument between her and Aisha, which led to Rudius speaking out at them with a cold tone, setting off a twinge of fear inside of her. That's unfortunately something they skipped over with the anime in the previous episode, is that yes, he kind of yelled at them to stop fighting in like a sharp tone that kind of shocked him, like crap, that was a little bit sharp. In her mind here, she thought he'd punch her, which made her cry a little bit. Was this her new life? Constantly flinching in fear? On the day of the exams, Rudius told them about the dorms. This sounded like the solution to her problems. With Aisha not attending, she wouldn't have to see them anymore. No one to compare her to, and she'd be able to live on her own. After they got their results, she spoke up, even though she feared he'd get angry. Dad probably told them to live together in his letter, so he may even hit her, but he agreed immediately. It was Aisha that got angry, saying it was unfair. Up until now, Aisha always got the better treatment than her. That's an interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing. In Norn's eyes, Aisha always got the better treatment. Even though before we got an indication that her family treated Aisha like crap, and Lilia is constantly making her be subservient to the family. You are Rudius's maid. Still, why did he agree to the request? But looking back, Norn realized that he never got upset with her, except when she fought with Aisha. Maybe he wasn't interested in her at all. Maybe she was a nuisance to him, seeing a golden opportunity to kick her out. It was convenient for her in the end, but it made her a little sad. Yeah, they indicate that in the anime, is like that idea that despite the fact that on Rudius' side right here, he's going, I don't want to tack her down and she get angry about that. I don't want to make her push me away by holding her still. And then from her perspective, it's, oh, he doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He wants to get rid of me. Living in the dorms was exciting to her. She had a roommate, a demon named Marissa. I'm actually happy they actually showed Marissa. I didn't really think they were going to show her. Grandmother said demons were evil, which she would have believed if she didn't just meet Rajerd. I liked how Rajerd just changes everybody. And this is the same thing that kind of happened to Rudius. Didn't have anything against Rajerd when he first seen him. And now he did have that, you know, indication from Roxy that they're dangerous. But Rudius kind of learned very quickly that demons aren't evil. Marissa welcomed her and helped her despite it being midterm. Later, she met a scary-looking demon girl from the self-defense squad. She was intimidated, but Marissa told her that she was a good-hearted person. That would be Goldiod, the one that grabbed Rudius when he found the Ponsu. She took her responsibilities seriously. They were all a big family and looked out for each other. Classes were difficult, as the teachers explained things differently than back at Millis. Plus, she was jumping midway through the year, so lectures were hard to follow. There was also a lot of classes about religion in Millis, while here was practical lessons in magic. She wasn't good at those, and the professors didn't bother explaining the basics. Now, it is important to note here that pretty much every character has pretty much pointed this out. Rudius, when he first got there, is like, man, the way they explain it's bad. Even Sylphie herself, when she first got there, she's like, they're not explaining things the way that Rudius explained things. And she was even helping others with their magic. Rudius even helped, you know, Presena with her magic. So this is a commonality here. They're not good at explaining magic. With fears of being dragged back to her brother's house if she failed, she studied back at her room. Even that wasn't helping, and she was at the end of her rope. Marissa was nice enough to help, which helped her get her head around the concepts she was supposed to learn in class. Aisha probably would have understood it all instantly. Sometimes Norn hated herself for being so stupid. Ouch. Ouch. This is where it starts to turn into the self-hate. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. Aisha is incredible. Rudius is incredible. And then when they have everybody start talking about Rudius, it doesn't help. She's already hating herself right here. The campus was large and she got lost a lot. She even bumped into Rudius with someone really important. It was embarrassing. Everyone was afraid of Rudius. Word was that he was the boss of a small gang of 6 thugs. And that would be the 6 leaders that I was talking about in the previous skipped content video. Is this idea of like they somehow created like this whole system and everything. If you wanted to get at Rudius, who's the boss, you had to go through like Zenoba or Cliff or somebody to get to him. They did everything that he wanted. 2 were in the dorms with Norn. Tall, scary-looking girls who strutted around like they owned the place. Marissa warned her to avoid them. That would be Lydia and Presena. Norn later learned that Rudius ordered them around to collect Ponsu from cute girls. Did his wife know about that? Probably not. The thought made Norn mad. While Dad was risking his life to save Mom, he was playing around. Her opinion of him kept lowering, despite his reputation being positive. People said he never picked on ordinary students, never harassed people. He also told the tough kids to leave the weaker ones alone. He was better at magic than anyone in the university, and a good teacher. Classmates, teachers, and even Marissa told Norn to follow in his footsteps. To be like the brother she feared and hated. She didn't want to be like him. It hurt knowing that she couldn't compare to him. He was better at everything. Just like Aisha. She left Millis, got away from that, got here. Okay, I can go to the university, get away from them. Nope, here again. Returning to the dorms one day, a big jumble of emotions had been growing inside her for weeks. Bitterness, sadness, self-pity, anger, and who knows what else. She couldn't hold them back anymore. Couldn't stop from breaking down. Marissa asked what was wrong, but Norn told her it was nothing. Was she wrong about Rudius? Or was everything wrong? It was probably her. That's when she finally realizes it's not Rudius. It's me. I'm the problem. It was actually really funny, the fact that when the PV released and it kept showing the points where Norm was holding her stomach in anxiety, everybody was, there was a bunch of people saying that she's pregnant. Oh, it was so great. Because yeah, sure, that's a perfect sign that you're pregnant. She was young the day that Rudius punched Father. While Father tried to explain that he had gone through a lot, she could never understand what that was supposed to mean. But now, it finally made sense. Norm was going through a lot herself now. If she worked hard, turned things around, cheered up, it would suck to have someone mock it by saying that they had a carefree life. She's putting herself in Rudius' shoes right now. What if Rudius is working hard and I'm mocking him for having a carefree life? No one would probably want to punch them, even if it was her own dad. Deep down, Rudius and her were probably similar people. He wasn't an inhuman monster, after all. That said, how was she supposed to confront him now? What would he want from her? How did he make up with Dad anyway? That was the gut punch. You see her with her father and him telling her all that stuff, and then her realizing how did they pull it off? They were beating on each other over here. Rudius was on top of him, beating him. How did they make up? She never got that side of it. She thought and thought some more, but nothing came to mind. Her belly began to hurt, stomach cramping up painfully. She became nauseous and burrowed deeper into her bed. She couldn't do anything, couldn't even bring herself to face her brother. Before, Dad was there to comfort her. Richard took his place, but here, she had no one like that. Marissa was nice, but she wasn't on her side. Another person that's not on her side, only suggesting that she talk to Rudius or go back to class. She knew that already. The problem was her body didn't want to move. After days of thinking in circles, passing out, and repeating, she now found herself sitting in her bed with Rudius in a chair before her. And that's when they spoke up at the same time. It felt like it was the first time she spoke his name. Apparently she wasn't hallucinating, but how did he get into the dorms? For a while, they just stared at each other, being the first time she looked closely at his face. He looked anxious. His features reminded her of her dad, which was reassuring, but of course, they look alike. Yeah, that curtain pull away and the brief moment of that haggard Paul's face before she blinks, that was just perfect. Perfect way they adapted that. I'm sorry, Norn. It hasn't been easy on you here, has it? I guess I don't really even understand you that well. I know this must be hard for you, but I'm not sure what to do. Was it just her, or was he really nervous? That reminded her of Dad, too. He fell silent again, sitting there, not moving an inch. He was watching anxiously. Again, that face of anxiety, when he goes to speak, it was like, oh, that, again, the tears. Dad would probably wrap his arms around her by now. Richard would pat her on the head, but Rudius didn't even approach her. She suddenly understood why. He was too scared she might reject him. Then the negative emotions began to melt away. She couldn't find him scary either. He was too much like her dad. And he probably wasn't going to hit Dad again either. She needed to forgive him. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and her throat quivered. Sorry, Rudius. I'm sorry. Rudius slowly and cautiously sat down next to her, gently putting her hand on her head, then hugged her to his chest. He was warm and smelled a bit like Dad, too. She cried in his arms for the rest of the night. Oh, it's so good. It is so good. It was so beautiful. So absolutely beautiful. That anxiety and everything just melts away. And I think that whole connection of him to her father just, it seals the deal. Afterwards, cutting forward. And now, technically, when everything kind of settles down, Rudius feels like he just didn't do anything. Like, I did nothing. She didn't say what was going on, what she was upset about. She just cried for a long time. Once she said that she'd be okay, at that point, he pretty much took his leave, left Sylphie to handle things while he was gone. He snuck back out. He thought that was it. But she did look okay for once. She even managed to look him in the eyes. He felt enormously relieved. Something told him that it was going to be all right now. That's when we cut over to Sylphie and Rudius, and they see Norn, and she turns and greets both of them. Really cute. Him being really kind of relieved about the whole situation, feeling like she looks a lot more cheerful. Still, in the end, he didn't do anything meaningful at all. It made him feel pathetic. He knew what it was like to be looked down upon and isolate yourself, but he failed to come up with anything to say. She must have worked it out by herself, processing her feelings and pulling herself over an obstacle. That was a seriously impressive accomplishment. Again, this is big words coming from Rudius. Again, he shut himself up for years upon years, and now his sister Norn right here, she pulled it off. She did what I wasn't able to do. And I had people trying to help me. With Norn, I just walked in the door. I didn't do anything. And she figured it out herself. That is an impressive accomplishment to somebody who's locked themselves up for their entire previous life. Paul and Aisha seemed to think that she was a clumsy, timid kid without special talents. But he had a very different opinion of her now. She managed to climb out of a hole he spent a whole life trapped in. If he was half as strong as her, his first life wouldn't have turned out so miserably. It was impossible to know for sure. His situation was different than Norn's. Even if he figured out his feelings, he may not have left his room in the end. Again, even they're acknowledging that she figured it out on her own, but that's not enough. There's still that other step. There's step 2. She also left. Even if I figured things out, I probably would not have left. Because again, a lot of that has to do with, it's not just his own feelings, which he could have figured out. There was also the fear of leaving, because that one is the snowball effect, being there for so long. But additionally, he had fears of going back out because he thought he was going to get beat down again. Maybe he just needed to be reborn and meet Roxy for that to be possible. Because again, Roxy was the one that pulled him out of that house. He was a shut-in until Roxy took him out to go do his exam. But no, what I was going to talk about earlier is when Rudeus is sitting here going, I didn't do anything. I literally have no clue what was going on with her, but she figured it out. But I didn't do anything. I literally was useless this entire time. I think he doesn't realize in the whole spectrum of this, which makes sense because, again, she's not saying anything. And unfortunately, Rudeus hasn't been with her much her entire life. He even admits that. I don't know anything about her. I've never learned anything about her. Never had a chance to or never did it, so to speak. But he doesn't know that Norn is sort of a pampered kid. Like, she was doted on by her mother while they were in Buena Village. They got teleported, and Paul has been protecting her entire life and giving her whatever she wants. He's protecting her and keeping her safe and nurturing her. And so she's a very nurtured kid. She likes her hugs from Paul. And additionally, likes the head pats from Reserve. She wanted that. And again, Rudeus, when he's standing there, he's afraid of going near her. And she even says that. He's afraid of coming near me because he's afraid of me rejecting him. But she wants that. And I think when she realized that he wants to, but he's afraid of rejection, she's like, okay, finally, I can allow him in here, and then he can hug me. She wants to be hugged. Is that unfortunate thing that when they're in the house, and when she first arrived there, he's afraid of getting too close to her and thinking that she hated him. But in actuality, she wanted a hug. Girl wanted a hug. She thought that he was dangerous and feared him and hated him all this time. And now, again, when the point that he says, go to the dorms, it's okay, again, she was sad. She wanted him to nurture her. And I think that whole shift there and her realizing that he is, he looks just like dad, smells just like dad, she's connecting to him right there. And he doesn't see that. Well, he sees that he did nothing. But in actuality, he did do something. He was there. Just like his brother was. He was there. And unlike him, she figured it all out and accepted him, whereas unfortunately for Rudeus in his previous life, he never accepted his brother. But again, it was all as simple as he was there. He didn't run away. He came there. He stood there and waited for her until she figured it out and accepted him. So he technically did do something. And yes, in lieu of an entire segment of talking about how nobody was on her side, sort of like him being on her side right there. He's there. The one person I never thought that would be at my side is at my side. Either way, he couldn't change the past. The relationship he broke could never be repaired, and he'd never know what was going through his brother's head back then. Still, he felt like something stuck between his teeth for a long time had worked its way free. If Nanahoshi managed to return to their old world, he'd have to ask her to take a message to his brother. Thanks for trying to get me through back then. And I'm sorry. That line hits. That line hits so much. Again, this is a big revelation for Rudeus and the idea of finally seeing and being told what exactly one of his family members did to try to pull him out of there. And yeah, the brother that beat the crap out of him and kicked him out of the house. Let's not forget that. Again, from the very beginning, the story opens up. His brothers coming from the funeral of their parents comes in there, beats the crap out of him, destroys his computer, and kicks him out. Kicks him to the roadside. That brother tried so hard to get Rudeus out of there, and he just kept spitting in his face in his own heart. And here, that same brother that destroyed his computer, his precious computer, which has been mentioned before, my precious computer, that same brother tried so hard, and I want to thank him for trying to do that. Oh, such massive growth for Rudeus, seeing his sister pull through something that he couldn't, and her fears. Like I said, all this right here of her fears of her brother and the pain that she's been going through and the expectations from her grandparents and all the other stuff around all that is just so good. Oh yeah, by the way, forgot, for those that missed it, that end card, the next chapter title, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just not going to say anything. As a light novel reader, I'm not going to say anything, but there it is. I'm certain there's going to be a lot of anime-only reaction videos out there freaking out about that. Hopefully they don't skip it and miss it, because I know that some people, even me additionally, a lot of times I like to skip the titles for the next chapter or the next episode, so yeah. Again, like I said earlier, I will be doing a skip chapter on Norn meeting Reserve, or at least Reserve meeting everybody else, which is a whole skip chapter. I might also do Zenoba and Ginger's chapter, which they've skipped as well. I just want to make sure that the Norn one here wasn't covered in this episode, which it looks like they had a little brief moment showing Roger traveling with Norn and him comforting her, but that was technically in this chapter. That's this bit right here. So look forward to that. If you're not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. I greatly appreciate you guys dropping by for my skip content video and impressions of this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed all this dive through and looking into this as well and giving my extra context to it as well. I just have a lot of fun doing these. People really appreciate it. It helps out the channel. Your guys' support it means a lot to me. Thanks everybody that checked out this whole video. But yeah, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, so thanks membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does. And until next Mushoku Sunday, y'all take care.